Greetings, Imagine. The Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude. Of course, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the as-yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm Robcasting at you from here, the Robservatory. This is Robservations, episode number 887. Listen, I don't have my guest. We've been planning this for 2 weeks, and we talked today. Everything was A-okay, and I hope he's okay because he's not here. I don't know where he is here, but you know what? His name is Jeffrey Morris, and I figured I would give you guys a little taste of who and what he is and what he's doing. So without further ado, here's Jeffrey Morris.
Hi, Jeffrey Morris here. I'm speaking to you today from my home office in Minnesota, the creative nerve center of my production company. I'm surrounded by the books and memorabilia that have influenced me throughout my life and career. I founded Future Dude Entertainment over a decade ago. During that time, I've created graphic novels and short films, including Oceanus and Parallel Man. Since 2022, both have received millions of views on the Dust platform. In addition to crafting cutting-edge sci-fi stories, I'm also known for developing cool production designs, from submarines to spaceships. Many of you have followed my work since the beginning, and I can't tell you how much your continued support means to me. My current project is called The Eagle Has Landed. It's an exploration of the iconic vehicle from the 70s sci-fi show Space 1999, and it's literally part of what inspired me to become a filmmaker in the first place. It's a story I'm excited to tell, and there's plenty of information about what we're doing at our Kickstarter page. I need your help to achieve a successful campaign because it's part of an even larger goal. Over the years, many of you have reached out to me asking, where's Oceanus Act 2? Or when's the next episode of Parallel Man? Well, you might be surprised because I often wonder the same thing. My team and I have been fighting for years to get them produced. And it's not just those projects. Persephone, my interstellar adventure movie, has major stars attached. Yet, after significant development and dozens of Hollywood meetings, the package is unable to move the needle with studios and streamers. Obviously, it's not easy to make complex and original science fiction films, but it shouldn't be this hard. Unfortunately, the film industry seldom takes chances on original intellectual properties. They focus on franchises and formulas that worked well in the past. Let's face it, the system is broken. And to be honest, it's damn frustrating. So I've decided to take matters into my own hands and control my own destiny. Like many other filmmakers in today's market, I've learned that crowdfunding is the only path forward that allows me to maintain creative control and develop fresh, high-quality content. That's why your help with the Eagle Has Landed Kickstarter is so important. Once this first one is successful, I plan to crowdfund other film projects in the coming years. Bottom line, I'm going around the Hollywood gatekeepers and directly to fans like you. With your support, I can bring to life the intelligent sci-fi media we all want to see. Go to Kickstarter.com to become a backer today.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, that was Mr. Jeffrey Morris. And I have to say that I actually had the opportunity to watch the man work on his film Oceanus. He had an unbelievable set built, like a full-scale 1-to-1 submarine set. It was awesome. Malcolm McDowell, we actually went and I got to film him recording Malcolm McDowell. I mean, Alex from A Clockwork Orange. Come on. One of my favorite actors. Lindsay Anderson's If. It was incredible to watch him work. And over the years, the things that he's done, the man shoots for the stars. Well, you know what? Why? You don't need me to tell you how great Jeffrey Morris is. You saw a little bit about who he is, what he's all about, and he's here to tell you. So you imagination connoisseurs, please welcome to Robservations, Mr. Jeffrey Morris. Jeffrey, how are you?
I am well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is Breakaway Day. It's a perfect day to launch your Kickstarter for The Eagle Has Landed. Now, we haven't shown the video for The Eagle Has Landed. I only show the video of your filmmaking philosophy and how you're going to choose to use Kickstarter. Yeah. But I to start out, I love hearing about your background. Now, you and I are we have almost exactly the same influences from, you're much more fashionable than me. I will say this. I have no fashion sense, and you can dance way better than I can. But other than that, our pop culture love and knowledge is very, very similar, of the same genre, I would say.
I would say we absolutely are playing from the same playbook. Yeah, for sure.
How did you become the imagination connoisseur that you are today?
It's funny. It actually began with me wanting to be an astronaut.
Come on.
I'm serious. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go into space, and it was my ambition as a child. And for some reason, it felt like we were on a trajectory toward an amazing future back in the early 70s, right?
It really did.
All the amazing NASA art and concept art of all the missions they wanted to go on, right? All the stuff they wanted to do. Being on Mars in the 1980s, and moon bases and space stations and space colonies and all this sort of thing, right? And I really felt like that's the future I want to be part of. And I was really, really on that track. And for some reason, I perceived by the mid 70s, and I was a kid, but I could sense that it wasn't going to happen. And it was terrifying to me. I don't know. It really hit me. I was like, what's going on? And I think what it was is all my friends were getting into Star Wars when I was actually I was going, but guys, there's this real space stuff. And the real space stuff was kind of waning, right? It wasn't, we'd stopped going to the moon. Skylab was interesting, but there was that lull between, Skylab and the space shuttle and everything. And Star Wars came up, and there were a lot of kids that I knew who got, they were all into Star Wars. It's like Star Wars replaced any interest that they had in real space and everything. Now, I liked Star Wars. I don't want to say I didn't like Star Wars, right? But I was disappointed when I saw it as a child, simply because it was about a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I wanted it to be about humans in our future, if that makes sense. Right. So I decided when I saw Star Wars, kind of between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, I was like, man, I wonder if I could grow up to make movies about the future that I'd like to see us achieve. And maybe I can find a way to get pop culture to divert back to the dream that we seem to be losing. That was my thought. And so I started down the path of working on developing films and stories and art and things like that. Yeah. So,
well, one of the things that I've really appreciated about what you've done is, on this channel, I'm always railing about storytelling and how I'd like to see a lot of elevated storytelling. And of course, we had Star Wars, which is wonderful, but I came, and I think you came from that Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, original Star Trek. Yeah. And it was interesting in 77. I loved Star Wars, but when Close Encounters came out, that was also a really big influence on me, obviously.
Oh, huge for me too. Close Encounters was huge.
And,
it was huge.
And the what was interesting was one of the things I loved about Close Encounters was that the government was on it. They were on it. They knew what was up. Mm-hmm. And the scientists, and even though there was a little push-pull between the scientists and the government in the movie, they still had the same dream. They were still going to they're all working together to establish this contact that occurred. And, I remember standing in line. There was a theater in Seattle, and it was right across the street from where Star Wars had been playing. And in November, December, the lines would stretch down the streets, and Star Wars had been playing for 7 months still. And there were these giant lines for each movie still. Yeah. Now where the Close Encounters theater was, if you were at the end of that line, you'd be standing at the brand new the Amazon headquarters, the whole open design, the glass bubble thing. It's there now. And it was a time when even when we got Star Trek the Motion Picture and the Black Hole within 2 weeks of one another. Yeah. And we had Alien that year. It felt like science fiction was here to stay. It was elevated. It was promising us a future, and it was reflecting what was in our minds. And did you feel any of that optimism that you had younger with the space program come back with the diversity of science fiction films that we were getting? Things like Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I had given up on. I was saying that I had felt like it was waning. The interest was waning. It was more about the space program, right, and cultural interest as opposed to movies, right? Because movies, if you think about it, like there was Star Wars, but for me personally, Close Encounters was even more impactful. Superman the movie was hugely impactful on me as a kid. That was another one that I think was just absolutely mind-boggling. It was an amazing film. And so, I think there was an absolute sense of optimism and positivity. Even watching Battlestar Galactica on TV in '78, right? I mean, that was super cool, and there was a sense of optimism and positivity and everything. And I think that something seemed to happen by the time we hit like the mid '80s, right? Where it started turning into, you had a lot more of that Mad Max, Terminator, it's right. It's things that the turn started to happen. It's like we lost the hope. You could feel it. You could feel the hope, and not to say again, great films, super cool stuff, right? But it was a completely different vibe to it than the optimism. I always felt like Star Trek: The Motion Picture shared DNA with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, 100%.
I really, really did. I felt like there was so much there that had a similarity to it and an energy to it that was similar. So,
well, one of the things, obviously, we'll get to the documentary, but
sure.
The two things that I loved growing up also, we didn't have the other Jerry Anderson stuff like we didn't have Thunderbirds, and we didn't have any of the Super Mary Nation shows. I saw my first experience with Jerry Anderson was UFO.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And it was, I think it was, I want to say it was on PBS or something. And it was, it was in Seattle. And first of all, I loved it, but I was terrified of it like I couldn't even sit in the room and listen to the end credits. Because
absolutely. It's terrifying.
End credits, and all it was the moon would come. It was, it was Barry Gray's music. It was so scary.
Well, didn't you think, to me, that was a metaphor? That was actually supposed to be the alien planet. That's what I thought. Oh, does that make sense? I think that was supposed to be like, here's the Earth, and here's the impending doom of the alien planet, right? I don't think it's supposed to be literal. That's what I always took it as.
I like that, and it was. If you go back and you watch the opening scene of UFO, when where Peter who later becomes the captain of Skydiver, is in the woods with his sister and their friend, like shooting. And
in the first episode.
In the first episode, they see the landed UFO, and the alien comes and just guns down their friend or the sister. No, guns down their friend, and they're blown back, and then the sister gets abducted. And it is absolutely brutal. And then of course you go from 1970 to 1980 in the series, even though it was made in 67 to 71, and it's just, I love UFOs so much, and the technology and the hardware and everything, and obviously the ships, the interceptors, the mobiles, Shad Air, all the stuff that they had.
Give me just 1 second. I'm just gonna move that over for a second.
Oh yeah, you got the Shad. It was
yeah.
And sure. That Jerry Anderson understood from his Super Mary Nation shows, like how fetishistic the ships and the vehicles were for kids.
Absolutely.
Like he knew that like it would take 5 minutes to launch Thunderbird 2.
Yeah.
And with the Barry Gray march music, and it would be
Absolutely.
rolled out, and you'd see the palm trees come down. And I
Yep.
didn't get to see those until cable television, like in 1980, when they would cut together episodes into like hour and a half movie or a 2 hour movie or something. And then I had seen like Thunderbird 6, the feature film, and Thunderbirds Are Go. But it was UFO, and then of course in the mid 70s, Space 1999.
Hold up before you go further.
Yeah.
Did you see Doppelganger?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay.
So
great.
or AKA Journey to the Far Side of the
Far
Sun.
Side of the Sun. Yes.
Now,
yes.
for those of you who don't know, so Jerry Anderson, that was his first feature film, live action feature film, and a lot of the crew and people that worked on UFO made that movie.
Yes.
And
yeah, well, you even had Ed Bishop and with George Sewell.
George Sewell, and
yeah.
If you guys haven't seen the movie, you can find it. It's available on home video. I have it on Blu-ray, and the plot is so Jerry Anderson. There is an Earth it's a duplicate Earth. It's on the same orbit as our Earth, but on the opposite side of the sun, and everything is like mirrored and it's backwards. Everything is and. Which was kind of goofy, but like we're sending a probe there. But again, it had like Bondy and spy tropes, like the opening of the movie is, and then and then we're sending a mission, and I don't want to ruin it, but I still love it today.
I still love it, and it's got there's a charm to it, and I don't know, there's an energy to that film, right? It's got this sort of futuristic. You can feel that it's a prototype for what happens with UFO, right? That's why I brought it up. It's like a prototype. For it. Yeah. Which the Sin is kind of a prototype for Space 1999, right? And you can just feel it. There's a through line for all three of those properties.
Oh yeah, and UFO was supposed to get a second season, and it morphed into Space 1999. There's been a lot that's been written on that, and it's fascinating. But 1975, I was 8. And I had built already probably 10 versions of the Enterprise from Star Trek, that model kit. And then the post Franz Joseph technical manual, they would re-release the Enterprise with all the 12 other Constitution class starships, so you could make any one you wanted.
Yeah.
And
that's right. They had the decals, right?
They had the decals, and then
decals in there.
It was Planet of the Apes, so the Planet of the Apes animated show had been on, and Mego had just sort of dropped, so they had dropped their superhero figures and the Planet of the Apes figures, and it was so suddenly kids could play with these things.
Yep.
And that just you'd make up your own adventures after the show was over. And then, I don't know if I remember the first time I saw Space 1999 and the music, and I knew I didn't, because Starlog didn't exist, and there was no way as an 8-year-old I could find anything out, but I knew that Space 1999 was linked to UFO. I hadn't seen Doppelganger by this point.
Okay.
I hadn't seen it yet. But I knew, because you could tell because of like the music. And even at the beginning, when you're on the nuclear, the opening of Space 1999 is on the far side of the moon at this nuclear waste dump, and and then of course you see, but you don't see it work immediately because you see these guys in one of the Moonbase Alpha moon buggies. But then it wasn't long after that we got this.
Yes.
And I made this one. This is a plastic.
Cool.
This is a plastic model kit of the Eagle transporter, and there. When I saw this, it was like seeing Farrah Fawcett Majors in Logan's Run. I mean, this was love it. This was seeing this was love at first sight. And for those of you who are watching the show that don't know what this is. This is the Eagle transporter, or as Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the Ace, calls it, the bug ship.
The bug ship.
The bug ship, the grasshopper.
I love the bug ship, by the
way. It's the bug ship. She goes, and
you're still collecting all those bug ships.
That's what she says. And I think I have like 15 in various forms. But I want to play the Kickstarter video now of your just launched documentary that is about the 50-year obsession with this ship. and everything. And I think your Kickstarter video does a really good job of getting into what did this mean to all of us, and what does it still mean, and why can I not have enough of these?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an obsession, and it's worth exploring.
And so this is the Kickstarter. By the way, this is incredible. This is one of the best Kickstarter videos I've ever seen. I just want you to know.
Well,
And I'll let the audience make that final call, but here you go.
Hi there, this is Nick Tate. I'm super excited to be part of the new documentary, The Eagle Has Landed. An exclusive look starts now.
50 years ago, an icon was born. The Eagle transporter is one of the greatest sci-fi spacecraft ever conceived. To this day, the design provokes an intense devotion among countless fans around the world. The question is, why? I'm writer-director Jeffrey Morris. I've been enamored with the Eagle since I first saw it in the TV series Space 1999 back in 1975. As a child who followed the Apollo program, the Eagle felt like a direct descendant of NASA's lunar module. Those transformative moon missions left an indelible impact on a generation, as did the Eagle in Space 1999. Over the years, I've discovered that I'm just one of millions of fans who has an affection for the Eagle and a nostalgia for a future we never achieved. So I'm shooting a feature documentary about the origins of this beloved ship, while also exploring its ongoing cultural impact. And I'm inviting you to join me. I'll be speaking with the Eagle's designer, visual effects wizard Brian Johnson. I'll also chat with Nick Tate, the actor who played legendary pilot Captain Alan Carter. It's going to be an epic journey as I travel around the globe to speak with Eagle aficionados and luminaries from the worlds of science and science fiction. As for myself, the visionary world building in Space 1999 blew my mind. It ultimately inspired me to become a filmmaker and production designer. I'm the creator of hard sci-fi projects such as the forthcoming deep space adventure Persephone, the apocalyptic underwater thriller Oceanus, and the universe-hopping techno-fantasy Parallel Man. Now I'm bringing all of my experience and passion to the creation of this documentary. The good news is we've already begun production. We self-financed a shoot in Louisville, Kentucky at Wonderfest, where I spoke with lifelong Eagle fans from around the country. They shared passionate stories about the iconic vessel and the aspects that make it so memorable. Then I traveled to Colorado, where I interviewed Kevin J. Anderson, the best-selling author of books set in the Dune, Star Wars, and X-Files universes. He also happens to be a huge fan of Space 1999. Recently, Kevin and I co-authored the novelization of my film Persephone. We had a blast discussing our mutual love of the Eagle and what it represents. Yet, there's still plenty left to do. I have to hire production crews at locations around the world. I also need to create visual effects and music. And of course, it all has to be edited together at a level that will rival any award-winning documentary. Now I'm asking for your assistance in completing the voyage. Check out our Kickstarter. There are tons of great rewards and even a couple of awesome stretch goals. A future began 50 years ago, and its time is now. Become a supporter of The Eagle Has Landed.
I just love that you launched the video today for Breakaway Day. For those
like an appropriate time.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, in the show, the moon is blown out of Earth's orbit on September 13th, 1999, hence the title of the show. Breakaway Day, as we call it. It's like Star Wars Day or something, but better, or First Contact Day. It's just more exciting for those of us. Now, one of the things I really like about something that you did in this Kickstarter video that is, I know that your documentary weighs into heavily, is this idea that if we were, as kids of that space program era, the fact that the Eagle transporter, it seemed so plausible. I think that one of the reasons we loved it so much is that we thought that, well, we're going to be able to fly on one of these.
Absolutely. No question. There's, okay. So I was obviously in love with the original Star Trek, just like, so many of us, right? I mean, that was a big deal. I loved the original Star Trek, but it was 300 years in the future.
Right.
And and there was something about being set 300 years in the future that it's like, well, I don't know, barring some amazing, medical breakthrough, I don't expect to be around for that, right? 25 years in the future, when we're set 25 years in the future with Space 1999, that seemed completely plausible, right? It's like, that's a world that I can live in. And not only is it a world that I will be alive for, I look at this and I see a spaceship on this TV show that has the same kind of thruster configuration that I see on the lunar module, right? I see aspects. I mean, I see a command module that feels like reminiscent of a Gemini capsule, right?
Yeah.
Or Gemini, as they like to call it. And I felt like it was connected to the space program. It felt like if NASA and international partners went and built Moonbase Alpha, this is the ship that they'd have 25 years from now, right? So it really felt like us as kids, this was something we could grow up to fly. And while maybe the show itself, the premise and, the moon flying around the universe and, running into aliens and stuff like that, maybe that wasn't going to happen, but it sure felt like a moon base, an international moon base, right? That could happen. Absolutely. Even storing nuclear waste up there felt like something that could happen, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, and I wasn't, the funny thing about it that I understood later was if the moon was blown out of Earth's orbit, it would still take a long thousands of years for the moon to get to another planet. And what I didn't understand when I was watching the show that I've come to understand in the subsequent years, when you get to the last episode of the first season of Space 1999, The Testament of Arcadia, they basically insinuate that there is some kind of a force, an alien force, call it God, call it, the monolith aliens. There's somebody there that's pushing the moon along on this.
I always imagine it like a giant cosmic hand that grabbed the moon and moved it every week to a new planet.
And it's such a funny thing because I know it was a very expensive show, but I love. And then, of course, in the second, there was only 2 seasons of Space 1999. And in the second season, they hired Fred Freiberger, who was the producer of the 3rd season of the original Star Trek, and they wanted to make it more pulpy and less existential. And even as a kid, I'm like, what is this?
Oh gosh, it felt like we were suddenly watching a completely different show.
Different show.
I was totally with you. I'm like, what the hell am I watching? I mean, and by the way, I struggled. I wanted to like it, right? But I was like, well, where's Victor? Who was like my favorite character, right?
Let's get rid of the old doctor.
Yeah. Where's Victor? Where's
like
Connor?
They did on Strange New Worlds. Let's get rid of the old doctor.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah,
but it was what I loved about the first season. It combined in a way, sort of like the original Star Trek did. There were horror elements. Space was scary.
Yeah,
and the scariest thing I'd ever seen on television was the Space 1999 episode Dragon's Domain. Still I mean, now you try and show it to people and they like kind of laugh at you. But
they're kind of like, come on, right?
But if you watch it, it was the tone of that episode and playing the adagio at the beginning, and so in this episode you find this graveyard, this space graveyard, and as a kid, again, you're already playing with. They had made dinky toys out of England, had made metal eagle toys. Mattel made one of the greatest licensed toys ever in an eagle that was almost to scale to the action figures that came with it. It was almost 1-to-1. So there was great toys they made. I never got them, but there were 12-inch figures of the main characters, Dr. Bergman, Dr. Russell, and there was Main Mission. They had a Main Mission. So you could get those toys, but when you saw Dragon's Domain, it was a space graveyard of all of these alien ships and then one ship from Earth. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and it was Brian Johnson, who later went on, was the director of special effects, the VFX supervisor for Empire Strikes Back. I mean, they had made all of these. And I remember getting the space graveyard was the greatest thing in the world until you found out that there was a creature there that would eat you and burn you to a crisp and literally spit you out of its mouth.
It's funny. My sister and I, when we saw that, I mean, like utterly terrified by that episode. It's really interesting. I have noticed there are 2 things that people remember when I talk to them about Space 1999. They go, "Oh yeah, that ship is really cool. Did you ever see that episode where there's that monster that kind of looked like a car wash?" And that's actually what we coined it when we were kids. We called it the car wash monster because it had those tentacles that would hang, and it was like, I don't know. Yeah,
And it would
I don't
scoop
know.
you in.
Yeah, suck you in and then spit out a carcass. I don't know. For my 7-year-old mind, that was a little too much. It was, it scared me, and I know people to this day who don't want to watch that episode. And it's funny. We're actually thinking about doing a little mini documentary alongside this one, which is about how Dragon's Domain messed so many of us up as children. You know, how it was such a damaging experience. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it was a damaging experience. I mean, I loved it. And then we also never
I
got
love it. It's funny. I liked it. I actually really liked it. It was a really cool story, and, and everything. It felt like this. What was it? Almost like a Moby Dick or
Yeah.
like those classic sort of tales, right?
Tony Cellini had to go
Tony
back
Cellini.
and get the
and everything. So, did you know I've been hanging out with Nick Tate.
Yeah, he does the voice over in the documentary at the beginning.
He does, and he's going to be in the documentary. Actually, he and I are going to have a big segment together in it. And but he told me that actually the episode was written originally for Alan. It was supposed to be Alan Carter's story.
Oh,
really interesting. Yeah, and Martin Landau was kind of like, nah, I don't really want to give this guy. That's kind of too big of a story for a guy who's one of our secondary characters. So he kind of, put the kibosh on it, brought in another guy, which is kind of interesting. So,
yeah. That's a very Shatner thing to do.
Yeah, it kind of is.
But what I did love about Space 1999, like Star Trek, it had a very international cast, and since it was made in England, a lot of the actors, the principal actors, and a lot of their guest stars were not just great. I mean, they had great British stage actors, like Brian Blessed was in, an episode, and Peter Cushing was in an episode, and Christopher Lee was in an episode. I mean, they had such great actors, and these guys would just, because all the actors in England were like, they didn't have, they weren't like $20 million actors. They were all day players. They did plays, they did TV, they did soap operas, they did movies, whatever. And so it had a credibility to it. Yeah. And because everybody spoke, well, except for Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, everyone spoke British English. So they were always inherently smarter than we were. Because as a kid, I'm like, oh well, if they have a British accent, they're smarter than Americans.
Clearly they're smarter.
And so it had that feel to it, and the technology, the production design that you've been so influenced by. What do you think? What was it about? I mean, UFO had more of that swinging London, like, yeah, baby, that we've seen in Austin Powers. I mean, it was very much that mod.
I would say it was sort of swank.
Yes, and Tony, like Michelangelo Antonioni's blow up. It was definitely the London of the 1960s brought into the 1980s.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Space 1999, it wasn't so much an evolution of mod London as it was an evolution of NASA.
I would say it's an evolution of NASA, but I would also say it was a continuation of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right. Okay.
Right. And if you think about 2001, that was designed along the lines of, he brought in, Stanley Kubrick went to fashion designers and, like furniture designers. And, he found all these amazing people in Europe to create the look and feel of that film, right? That he didn't go to the typical production design people who were doing typical sci-fi films at the time, right? The kind of look and feel, the UFO kind of movies. I'm talking about the kind of Earth versus flying saucers kind of stuff, that kind of thing, right? It's this, right? He wanted to go in a completely different direction, which is part of why we've never forgotten about 2001, because they literally cut a new swath in cinema with the design and look and feel. I really feel like they had. I always felt like Space 1999 was, what if we took Clavius Moonbase from 2001 and Star Trek and put them together?
Yeah,
that's what it always felt like, right? It was like a combination of the two, And it felt like there was like someone said, hey, this is really cool as a Moonbase, but we really want to travel around the universe like they do in Star Trek.
Right.
How do we do that, right? And so that's definitely felt like what was going on. But I guess getting back to it, there was definitely a sleek clean, beautiful aesthetic. And I actually feel like that 2001 Space 1999 aesthetic, it's not touched much, right? There've been very few films. You know, if you think about it, you get this more than anyone, that there's these basic tracks of film design, right?
Right.
You've got this influence of 2001. You've got this influence of Star Wars. You've got the influence of Alien/Aliens. You've got Blade Runner. You've got Tron, I think, you know, which is another, right? But these are all lanes, right?
Yes.
Right. And it feels like a lot of the designers who are working on these films, they're whether they know it or not, they're in the lane. They're in one of those lanes quite often, right? Now they'll remix it and do it a different way, but they're still in a lane. You know, they're still in one of those lanes. You know, and go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
no, 100%. I was going to say, you know, one of the things that you don't really, I don't think these people realize with the Apollo program was just how dirty the moon is. Like moon dust gets into everything, you know, and we didn't get the LEMS back, so no one saw just how dirty they were, you know. And,
sure, absolutely, yeah.
And so when you look at 2001, and because they're hermetically sealed, when you're on the Discovery and things like that, it's perfectly clean, you know, and and then when you go to the aesthetic of something like Alien, you have almost like this samurai armor, you know, spacesuit, which looks amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong, absolutely. I love that design.
Very Mobius. Well, it was Mobius actually.
It was Mobius, and it's beautiful, and it has even the way you respirate. You know, when you're breathing out, it's shooting up the top of it. And then there was, of course, what I thought was interesting in 2010, which I'm actually a fan of as a space adventure movie.
I am too.
The design there was much more. There was still the 2001 aesthetic, but the Leonov was much more. It was more like a tugboat in space. It had more.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I always felt with 2010, which I am a fan of, but it always felt like a step back.
Yeah,
because it felt like they were looking at almost like space shuttle technology and design, the look and feel of what was going on in the 80s. And what I wanted them to do was go, well, what would this have looked like 10 years after? You know, right. That was. I think that was a mistake on the part of the filmmakers. I think they should have been like, we need to push this. What it would look like 10 years later, and what it felt like was a digression visually in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about on this show how it's weird that there's a lot of people, especially like in Star Trek now, especially. They want to say that our past is the future that's represented in these fictions. So Star Trek's past has to be our past. And as we push forward, they need to change Star Trek canon to
look, man, I'm with you 100% on what's going on with Star Trek. Okay. I'm with you 100%. I just think, I just feel like, okay, let me say it this way. There's something that they've never, ever tried. Okay? And look, I'm not a guy who is opposed to the idea of reboots or remakes. I'm not. I was, or continuations. I was open-minded about Star Trek The Next Generation. I was open-minded about Deep Space Nine. I liked the BSG remake, the reboot. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. I'm not one of those guys who's complaining that Starbuck was a woman. None of those things. I'm very open-minded. Okay. The problem that I have with what's been happening with Star Trek since 2009 is it just doesn't feel like, it feels like the people creating it are thumbing their nose up at the past. They literally just don't get it. They have, and there's something that they've never tried. It's like people make that I've heard people who have worked on this stuff say things like, well, you can't make the sets that were in those shows back in the 1960s. People would laugh at that, because look at them, right? I'm like, well, you guys don't really get the fact that to people who are watching the show in the 1960s, it looked amazing. It was cutting edge. It was unbelievable what they'd accomplished. And what bums me out, and I've never seen them try it ever, would be, how about we try to actually replicate the look and feel of those shows and actually update it with production. You can update the production design and update the look and feel of it in terms of the textures used and the building materials and stuff like that. But the truth is, those people did a spectacular job back then. It was amazing. And I just feel like no one has tried in any of these reboot stuff since 2009 to try to truly emulate or truly pay homage to what was created back then. That's just my view. You know,
I agree. If you look at the original series bridge, aside from the actual buttons, like the jelly bean buttons, if you were to take that bridge exactly the way it was, maybe add some more detailing to the panels, but essentially keep it the same.
Yeah.
And lit it differently.
Yeah.
And shot it in 2.35 instead of 4x3.
Exactly.
It would look incredible.
Exactly. And I mean, literally, just take it and just up the building materials that you use. You see what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah.
Up the production materials, but don't change the aesthetic.
No.
And just change the lighting. Like
that's all you have to do. And maybe the corridors are a little too big. You know, make the corridors smaller and add more textures, like you said, to the walls and things.
Yeah.
But it's funny to me because one of the things I can't get past was We Are Children of production design, where Kubrick had to make it believable. You know, he had to make NASA believe that maybe in 2001 what they had already made might look this way. This was the lineage, and if you watch the aesthetic of what went on, like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, they were trying to go, okay, this is like 10 years after the original series, and it's all form and function, and it all had a purpose, it all had to work. When I watch, say, modern Star Trek, and I don't want to just bag on modern Star Trek, but the sets are too big.
Like I don't understand that bridge, like the bridge on Strange New Worlds. It's like, it's literally like, you know, it's like, Uhura, what is it? You know, it's like she's way over there.
It's really, and they don't even understand the internal, when you watch on Discovery, like where the turbo shaft is, and it's all in this empty space, and you're like, okay. And when I look at that, I'm like, you have no understanding of what a ship like this would actually have to be configured as. And when I think about things like when I saw Blade Runner 2049, one of the things I wondered about was, okay, what are they going to do about the technology? You know, everyone's got cell phones, and they made the decision, which I thought was brilliant. They said, okay, whatever technology exists in Blade Runner, they called it an analog future. We're just going to extrapolate on that. And when they go to Wallace's headquarters, and then a wood ball will come down a thing that has the wood ball is read by a computer, and it has all the. So they decided to go with that future, to extrapolate rather than be like, well, now we have to make it like the Blade Runner future is not our future, so we have to like update it.
So well, here's the thing.
It's
okay.
weird.
I'm gonna go back to, even if I wouldn't have made those aesthetic choices they've made with Star Trek, right, and in recent history. They could have just simply said, this is a reboot. This is completely new. Let's just, the problem is they try to have it both ways.
Like Galactica, they could have done a reboot.
And then you can do anything you want. Everything can look different, and you can do whatever, you know? And it's like, you know, one of the things that I look at this, I know people here probably don't want to hear us.
No, they do. They do. They love it.
Oh, okay. But one of the, I have to vent a couple things. Like nacelles aren't rockets. Okay, they're not rockets. These, you know what I mean? They generate a warp field and the warp field, you know, the geometry of the warp field causes the ship to move. They're not rockets. It's like, how did people not know this who are making this show? I don't get it. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not trying to be some, you know, nerd about it. It's just literally, this is what we've watched for decades. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same. It's supposed to be the same timeline. You know, the one, I don't know if it drives you crazy, but I don't understand the aesthetic of the exterior of the Enterprise. The dark gunmetal, like, what is that? What am I looking at? Like, what? I just don't get it. I don't get it.
You'll get no argument from me. And one of the things that I think is problematic is, like, and again, not to belabor the point, but, you know, here, I'm going to go full frame on this. One of the things about the Eagle transporter is you see that the retro rockets, these are the same retro rockets that are on the side of the command module, the Apollo command module. And so when you saw the Eagle transporter, by the way, I had to fix this, so it's
I'm gone.
I got to fix this.
Let me show you something.
But this aesthetic. So when it moved, this is great. This is great. Here we go.
Yeah. So, you know, look, you can just literally see right here, right? The same sort of reaction control, thrusters, right? The exact same. Even the fact that you've got the you know, these sort of
and even the front. You can see on the lem, put the lem back up again.
Oh yeah.
And show. So if you see like even the front of the lem, this looks like a natural extension of the lunar excursion module from the Apollo program.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes. There's no question.
And that's why I think, since your documentary is all about this ship, and see even the command module, the exact same reaction control thrusters, and again, even the front, it's redolent of all of this.
No, it right. So this is 1960s, and what you have there would be 1990s, right?
Right.
You can feel it. You can feel there's a logic there.
And once we had a presence on the moon, this is a zero gravity workhorse. I mean, yes, theoretically, it could probably travel between the Earth and the moon, but I don't know how this could only go to a space station.
That into an atmosphere. There's no.
Yeah, you could never land even though it does land in the atmosphere in other places.
No, they show that, but they're not getting the science.
No. But still, I mean,
the thing would be burning up. It would be, I don't even think you'd take off from the surface of the Earth and go. But look, if it was in space as a workhorse in space, right, and traveling on the moon or traveling to asteroids or other bodies in the solar system that are airless. I mean, come on, it's perfect.
Absolutely, and I think, and it was as a kid, it was so much fun to play with that. Once you got the dinky toy, even though the colors were wrong, it didn't matter. It was one of those things where you would imagine yourself in it as you played with it. So to get to this documentary, I mean, it's one thing to make a documentary. You're making a specific documentary about this spacecraft, the Eagle Transporter, that doesn't even really exist. Right. Which I said, and I mean this could be one of the great fan documentaries of all time. And I know that the way you direct, the way you bring production value to the project, all I can say is that it's going to be slick and awesome. Even like I said, your Kickstarter video is an indication of your filmmaking skills. It's going to be amazing. I mean, I know it's a documentary, but you're also going to CG. You'll have representations of the Eagle that no one's ever seen before. It's going to be amazing. And I, for one, can't wait to see this documentary. But what made you decide to want to make it?
Okay. So I was sitting around, I don't know, it was about a year ago, and I was, I think I was looking at some collection of mine. I had one of my Eagles. I was in the middle of building my house, and I had brought to the place that I was staying while I was building my new house. I had an Eagle with me, and I had it on my desk, and I was like, why of all my collectibles did I bring this one thing? I had to have an Eagle. I had a 12-inch Eagle, right? It was a rescue Eagle, actually. And I was like, why am I obsessed with this thing? Because I've loved it since I was 7 years old, right? You were talking about how we didn't have Starlog and we didn't have, all these different ways. Like I saw a preview of Space 1999 on our, so I grew up in Tempe, Arizona, and there was an NBC affiliate in Phoenix that carried Space 1999 on Saturday nights. I think it was at 6 o'clock. And the summer before it came on, they were doing a fall preview. And they said, and this year we've got a brand new series called Space 1999. I'm like, I was this kid who was into space stuff, like
right
space,
there with
right?
you,
right? And I was like, what is that? And so I start watching this. They show a preview, and in the preview, the first thing in the preview was an Eagle flying by.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? That is so cool, right? And I was like, I have to watch this show. And I remember obsessively grabbing TV Guide and trying to mark it, know when it was going to show, and And so really, literally from the first moment I saw an Eagle, I thought that thing is the coolest ship I've ever seen. I think it's awesome. Now, what's happened for me is throughout my life, I've met so many other people who like this ship just as much as I do.
Yeah, me too.
I remember watching, years and years before I ever met you, watching Free Enterprise. And there's that moment when one of the characters points with an Eagle. And I was like, this guy gets it. The director of this movie gets it. I thought that was hilarious, right? And so it's not just me. It's people all around the world. There's a gentleman, Jan Venneberg, who's in Denmark, who has constructed he spent the last 4 years or something building a quarter scale Eagle in his backyard. Okay, and it's huge, and it's really well done. It's incredible. He really figured it out, and it looks like an eagle. It's fantastic. It's not some hack thing. It's like literally like if you want to hire somebody to build a full size eagle, get this guy because he knows how to do it.
Is he going to be in your documentary?
Absolutely, he's going to be in the documentary.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess the point is like there are people collecting this. There's actually more people collecting them now than ever before. There are people building model kits of it. There are all these pre-built ones. There's all these different versions of it, die-cast ones, different. Right? I'm like, what is this? What's this about? So I started wondering, and the conclusion I came to was, wait a minute. There has to be a connection between all of us who grew up and wanted the future to be something different than it turned out to be. And somehow the eagle represented that future that we lost. And that's why we're all holding on to it so much, because it represents that future that we never got to have. I really, really believe that. And the more that I've kind of thrown that hypothesis out to people, I've had a lot of folks where like a light bulb comes up. They're like, I didn't know why I love this thing either. You know what? I think you're right. And so what I want to do is go on an exploration. So that's why this is not a Space 1999 documentary. It's actually a cultural documentary. I don't even, it's really about the idea that NASA, it begins with the space program and 2001: A Space Odyssey and this sort of pre-Star Wars, realm of real space and the kind of science fiction that was happening at that time and these visions of the future. And then here comes Space 1999 and the Eagle, and then people keep holding on to it and everything, and then as I talked about earlier, that future falls apart, and we all hold on to this because it's part of it. It represents that dream.
Yeah,
and that's yeah.
I love that aspect about your documentary because it's one thing to talk about an Eagle transporter being very cool, but in a way, I think maybe in an oblique way too, your documentary addresses fandom of all kinds.
Sure.
Through the lens of this idea that on one hand, our technology has advanced, information technology has advanced to an incredible degree, and we're going to see in the next 10 years even more incredible advancements.
I agree.
And yet, it's the last time we landed on the moon, man landed on the moon 51 years ago. In July, I don't know if it's July, but in 1972 was the last time.
The last one was in December of 72.
December of 72. So we're approaching the 51st anniversary, and I was so excited to see the Indians land on the pole, the south pole of the moon.
Oh, it was so cool. It was awesome.
And they put, because I've always heard that eventually there's going to be a space race between China and India. Which could very well happen, and we've partnered up with India, so we're sharing technology and information. And it's interesting today. I don't know if you saw this, but they dropped the trailer for All Mankind.
I saw
season
that.
4. Yeah, and I love that they made it like an advertisement for.
Yeah, it was like
join us. Here's what Apple technology is going to do for you. You can be a part of it. I love that show. I love the show so much. But the idea that maybe. There's still all the naysayers like, oh, why go into space? And it's not just the quest to find out what's out there, but it's also the byproducts of space research and space technology, the things that you just everyday products and how our world, the trickle down from what we learned going to the moon.
We wouldn't be here doing this.
No. All of the information technology.
Yeah, none of it. We wouldn't be. But I'm going to say that there's something even bigger that hasn't happened, that is yet to happen, which is about us as humans, and the idea that I think we are at our best when we're challenged. I think we're at our best when we have to go to new environments and we have to figure out and innovate and you know what I mean, like
I agree.
Take ourselves, right. I think that's something that we need as a species to drive us forward, and without it, we decline, we decay, right? And even though we have all this amazing technology right now, I'm not entirely convinced that our mental capacities, our moral capacities, our intellectual, our philosophical, all those elements, I'm not sure those are climbing with the technology, if that makes sense. As a matter of fact, I theorize that some of that is actually already peaked, and we're actually on a downward. with that,
I
right?
completely agree.
Yeah, and I feel like, it's like this misnomer. It's like, we've got this great technology. It's like, yeah, but if we're idiots, what does it mean? What does that get us, right? It's like, if you think about it, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot of people who talked about the idea that at the time, if we were to, what was it going to do? If we automate, humans will have more time. And what did they think we were going to do? Well, we'll become more intellectual. Every single thing that they theorized we would become because of automation, right? It was always something that we were better because of it.
Right.
We were smarter, we were stronger, we were more capable, right? They didn't say, and then because of technology, we're all going to become Wall-E people. And you know what I mean? Right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Right? It wasn't right. Exactly.
Sitting on your floating chair.
Sitting here watching, our little screens and sucking in horrible foods, and you know what I mean? It's like, that's not. Another one is Idiocracy, which you and I could probably talk about for hours. I mean, that film Idiocracy, and watching what has happened, right? So here's where I'm going. I think that space exploration is part of it's the next step for us. It's what the species needs to move forward and become better. And I think it's missing for us right now. I really do.
I 100%. I agree with you. Yeah. It's really interesting. Just the Webb telescope has been up. It's been operational for not very long. Mm-hmm. And already it's challenged all of the current cosmology. All of the every theory about the universe has been blown apart by what Webb has just started to bring us.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And it's stunning. And the funny thing is I keep seeing people going, well, they discovered a planet where they think that there's methane gas, and they found traces of elements that could only exist with life.
With life. Yeah.
And so I saw somebody on Twitter or X say, I'd rather look at something that has a nitrogen atmosphere because it's more important. But I don't think if we find any kind of life at all,
any life,
even if it's a paramecium or an amoeba or something,
yeah.
this will shatter the core belief system of everything that we've ever thought of ourselves.
Yeah,
and it would lead I think another thing we also need to do is change our modes of thinking, like even how we think of ourselves. I mean, I've talked a lot about on the show. There's a Israeli historian named Yuval Harari who wrote a book.
Oh, I read his.
You read *Sapiens* and then *Homo Deus*. The one thing I loved at the end of *Sapiens*, which is like 100,000-year history of humanity, he asks the question that we as a species have to decide who and what we want to be.
Absolutely.
Like who do we want to be moving forward?
Question.
And I look at our I mean, we've always had politics in the United States, but I feel that our level of political discourse has really taken a nosedive in terms
of no question.
And I'm going to do a show about classical education on Robservations, and I was reading about Booker T. Washington, who was a slave, but when he was emancipated, there was a lot of people forget this, but a lot of newly freed slaves started schools.
Yeah.
And Booker T. Washington said basically that he thought that a schoolhouse represented what he thought heaven was like. And I just found this. I just got this today.
So I was
reading on the show, and there was the idea of education, and classical education has been completely blown out of the water.
Yes,
now you have people talking about well, this only represented the white man, the patriarchy for hundreds of thousands or hundreds of years, and it's like, but the thing is, classical education is an ongoing dialogue that's been added to for the last since the Greeks.
Well, I think one of the things that I think they're missing by constantly focusing it on the race aspect is that they're missing that there were other voices mixed in with this.
Oh, without
right. And it's really sort of disavowing and not allowing us to really acknowledge their contribution and involve. Right? You know what I mean? It's like it's a bigger picture than what we're doing with this right now. And this outrage machine, this constant sort of addiction to outrage, I think we see in our culture right now.
Yeah, I didn't mean to bring it up as a racial issue. I was just thinking about how education, we're now people teach for the test.
Yeah.
And it used to be that you would get a broad broad-based education, because a broad base of knowledge helps you appreciate the world around you.
Right. No, no, absolutely. I could not agree more.
And
I want to throw one idea at you. Which is something that I think is missing, which I try to imagine this. I think when you talk about we have to redefine how we see ourselves, right? I think people like you and me, I've considered myself to be a citizen of the universe.
Right.
If that makes sense, right? So it's like when I'm sitting right now in the universe, I'm not sitting in Minnesota.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I am in a way, right? But I've always looked at, I feel like, could you imagine a world where small children are taught from day one to look at the world through the lens that they're on a planet. They're part of a solar system. They're part of a galaxy. They're part of a cluster of galaxies. They're part of a local group of galaxies. They're part of a universe, which could be part of a multiverse, right? All that sort of thing. Can you imagine what that would do to their minds if they saw that from day one? And that was how they were raised, and right? We have a very different society. A lot of the things that I think we're so caught up on, and so many things that are that I personally feel are very petty. I think a lot of that would start to go away, because we'd be like, well, what are we should be. This is where I'm tying this back to the space exploration thing, right? It's not. See, space to me is not about some sort of. It's not just about hardware or some sci-fi movie. It's about the fact that it's the universe. We live in the universe,
right?
You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, so the idea that we're part of the system. You know, there's this one idea that I was thinking about recently about. I think the problem that humanity has, and I'm very interested in your opinion on this. I think humanity we're stuck in a human universe. Our universe for humanity is whatever we are doing and whatever we're about as a species. And whatever flavor of that is, right? There's all kinds of different flavors of that. But at the end of the day, we're all looking at the universe as whatever humans are doing. And however, right? It's very human centric. And I think about the idea that like an asteroid, a comet, something, there would be no thought about preserving humanity. It's happened at least 5 or 6 times to this planet where almost everything got wiped out because of this. If you had a gamma ray burst, you know what those are, that could sterilize the whole, sector, right? You know what I mean, right? And it wouldn't think anything about human affairs. Does that make sense? You know what I mean, right?
No. I have this is something our mutual friend, Mike Bodden. I was talking to Mike Bodden about this, and Mike Bodden was we were talking about what if we finally break into the communication networks that whales have, and if we suddenly figured out their language and could actually converse with them, and what if whales, we find out that because like you said, we don't even think, because we were told by our religious leaders that we have dominion over the world.
Right.
Well, clearly we live. The one thing about social media and smartphones, it's shown us that animals have a lot more going on than we might have thought. How many videos of different disparate animals snuggling up to one another? So look at so and so's friends with so and so, and you see like a raccoon curling up with a dog or something, and it's obvious that the animal world, and it's not just because we're anthropomorphizing or I'm anthropomorphizing this, it's that because now that we can suddenly see these images of animals from all around the world, I think the perception of what's going on in the animal kingdom for the first time in human history. Over the last, we can watch National Geographic specials and and Richard Attenborough,
because we have these devices now that allow us to capture so much information,
and on our own,
we're picking up these moments that are really giving us a clue into animal sentience.
And once we don't even think, if we break in, and I think this is one of the things about deep learning AI, once they turn deep learning AI toward these kinds of things and they crack, and we will, make no mistake, we will crack these codes. And suddenly we're going to be able to converse. And what if a whale is unbelievably smart? It's just they've always existed in the ocean.
Exactly.
So
we tend to think of smarts as being like, well, they don't build anything. We build stuff.
Right.
Right. It's like,
but they don't need to have anything built.
They don't need to build stuff.
And what if
they might have a completely different type of intelligence and everything? Wait. One thing I've got to interject that's super interesting. You've got to read this book. I'm reading a book right now called Planta Sapiens, which is about the idea that plants actually have a sentience and intelligence. And it's really about this. It's a very, very intelligently written, thoughtful book that talks about how prejudiced we are as animals, as mobile animals, to the fact that plants, which actually dominate the surface of this planet way more than we do, right? And we're just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it's a plant, you know. But it's actually, they're super complex, and they have completely different. He was explaining. This author talks about how plants have strategies. Plants compete. Plants have almost right. I mean, it's really something. And you start looking at it that way, you start to realize, oh my gosh, these could be intelligent beings that we just don't see them that way because they're so different from us, right? And I feel like that's the kind of culture I wish I lived in, where we could, you know what I mean? Like, where conversations like what you and I are having right now are just commonplace for the average. Could you imagine that world? What that would be like?
Well, no, I mean, you know, and you look at some of our great genre entertainment has touched on that, like, you know, the whole cordyceps in The Last of Us. The whole, if you look at like Paul Stamets, who a character, Brian Fuller, the Stamets character in Discovery was inspired by Stamets, the man who studies fungi, and if you're fungi or whatever, and you if you start looking into that and around the world, it's insane when you start getting into these kinds of things. And we, you know, we la-di-da, we walk around, and we as human beings, most of us don't even care because we're trying to put food on the table and pay our rent.
That's right. No, we're just trying to live. Yeah.
And I get that. I don't begrudge.
I do. No, and I'm not putting that down either. I just wish that as a culture, if we could decide as a culture to have a completely different trajectory. That's my point. Right?
No, and we've now become so me. It's you need to look at me, and you need to you need to make me happy all the time. And I've never thought that way. I was like, I'm more of the needs. I'm in needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one guy.
Absolutely, no question.
And I was going to say, though, if we break in and find out that whales, and I, you know, not just because of Star Trek 4 or anything like that, I'm just saying that whales, because they are very intelligent, if we break into their communication and they are higher thinking beings, like if they have an idea of God, and what if God is a whale? Are we going to tell them that their idea, that their faith is wrong?
No, I mean, right.
And then we would have.
Or I'm going to throw another one at you. What if they have an understanding of something that really deals with, you know, like a level of depth and perception about life on this planet and existence on this planet? Because remember, these are mammals, right?
Right.
Who at one point were on the surface of the planet, right up here on the surface, and then went into the ocean, right? Okay. What if they have a perspective? What if they have a perspective on this whole thing that? You're right, or a measure of knowledge that goes back to a time that we can't even conceive of.
And that's how they circumnavigate the planet, because they've been aware of the stars for millions of years. You know, because they go back millions of years, and we can't even begin to fathom what we can't fathom.
Right.
And
that's why I brought up the plant thing.
Yeah, and it's all around us. Like, I was never a dog owner. This seems silly, but I grew up in my mom's a crazy cat lady. So over the last 6 years, I now have 3 dogs of very different personalities. And I am astonished. Most dog owners, this is going to seem silly to say, I am astonished at just how sentient and how aware and how much personalities dogs actually have.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're incredibly, like, way more intelligent. I mean, you have to have dogs, but it's incredible to me how empathetic they are, how smart they are, and sure, and it's not just me anthropomorphizing dogs.
No, you're not. No. I went the same thing with my dog. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's wild.
A look in the eyes. There's a connection point. There's a you can see it. The wheels spinning. You can see a thought process and a perspective. And and you know, it actually made me think about the fact that there are. I don't think it's just dogs, man. I think there's all kinds of...
I don't either. I think, you know, animals to varying degrees. And I think once we break in, and I do think, this is a crazy thing to say, but we're always talking about, well, AI is going to take our jobs and it's going to write our movies for us. AI is also going to be able to advance healthcare in ways we can't even begin to fathom yet. But once it does, when they start pointing these deep learning AI, and when we approach the singularity, the things that we're going to learn about the natural world are going to completely change humanity's perspective. You think we're going to stop fossil fuel productions, we're going to stop all of this horrible stuff because we're going to be confronted with the reality of the universe that we thought we lived in is much bigger and much more wondrous, and we have been idiots because we've only been here for a very small part of time.
We're very, very arrogant about it.
Yes.
You know, we're very self-assured that we as a species are it, man. We you know.
Well, that's what our religion tells us.
Yeah, we're in charge, and it's all about us, and it's exactly however we see it, and we, you know, we're the top of the pyramid, and it would be very fascinating to. Well, I'll tell you this much: I believe that AI is going to. There's a potential that it will start to show us and take us down a peg too, you know, and really give us a
it will. And then there's going to be, we're going to have to deal with AI and CRISPR technology, and people are going to start fabricating horrible diseases and awful.
Well, the thing that I see with AI is that I see two sides to it, right? I probably fall more on the doom side just a little bit, simply because it's humans creating it.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You know, that's more of my thing. And I think one of the things that I feel like the sci-fi authors missed, you know, there was this idea, like there's this one intelligent, right? It's Colossus. It's, you know, or it's, you know, I mean, there's going to be it's Skynet. It's right.
Yeah.
Right. And what we're going to have is there's the Google version, and there's the Microsoft version, and there's the Meta version, and there's the Chinese version, and there's the Russian. You know what I mean? That, like, what's that world going to be like? That's what I wonder. You know, when you start getting to.
Well, I also think that, like, I think the most prophetic modern science fiction film is probably the movie Her, the Spike Jonze film when Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with Scarlett Johansson, the operating system that he falls in love with. And there's a moment in that movie that I still think is one of the great moments of any science fiction film, when he finally puts two and two together, and he thinks that he's in love with this operating system because she knows everything about him. And he finally turns and looks at her and he goes, "How many people are you talking to right now?" And she goes, like 6,472, because he's made himself believe, because he's human centric, that he's the most important thing in the world. And every one of us, social media, especially lately with TikTok and identity politics and all this, people believe that they're so important. And maybe AI taking us down and showing us that and for me, I look forward to seeing the broadening of our horizons. And it's going to be very interesting, but you have to be interested in that. You know, and I think a lot of people just they're not even interested in the wonder, like the wonder and the awe of our existence, and the fact that on a cosmic scale that we exist at all. Like all of us, we're the only ones of us that there are.
I mean, that's part of what actually kind of guts me a little bit about this, right? When I think about the opportunity we have as a species, the fact that we even exist, and the fact that you've got it, you know what I mean, right? Just let alone, I mean, no, shoot. I mean, of course, the odds are there's probably some other intelligent life in the universe, in our galaxy even, right? The odds are there. But again, you know something? Oh, yeah, I just want to run an idea that you'll enjoy this. Think about this. I was talking with Alan Stern, who is the principal investigator of the Pluto mission a few years back, that's still out there right now at New Horizons. And we were talking about the fact that he like Pluto actually has a shell of ice above a subsurface ocean, it appears. And it's a very warm ocean. It's surprisingly warm, right? And if you look at all these moons in the solar system, like Europa and Enceladus and Titan and all these, right? It seems like there's a lot of these subsurface oceans. Now, imagine this. What if a lot of the life in the universe is actually formulating inside those icy crusts? Now, if you're a being, an intelligent being that evolved down there, what are you going to think the universe is?
Water.
You're going to think that's the whole universe, though, right?
Yeah.
Because you going up, you know, out of the pressure, right? Some of these oceans are 60, 70, 100 miles deep, right? So it would be like a space mission for them to go up to to the surface, right? So the shell of ice would almost be the outside of the universe to them.
Right, exactly.
Think about that, right? So there could be all kinds of life in the universe, but we're not actually seeing it or connecting with any of it because it's actually evolving under these icy shells. I just think that's fascinating. I had to share that with you.
But and what if those life forms are communicating?
Right.
Like what if Enceladus and Europa and Io or whatever, and even Earth, what if crustaceans for whatever reason or
somehow able to tell? Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know. And
well, my whole thing too is I really feel like that's part of why I feel like the sci-fi, like a lot of the stuff I'm trying to create, is really going to be more solar system centric, because there are so many stories to tell just in our own solar system. There's so much stuff out there. It's just so fascinating. So again, we go way back to why am I doing this documentary? Why do I want to talk about the importance of the future and space? It's exactly what this conversation entails. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the fascinating things. I mean, you can watch the documentary and be like, I love an Eagle transporter, and you'll get that. Right. But like all good documentaries, you're going to be working at multi-levels, and you're going to be talking to, I mean, sure, you're going to go talk to Dr. Helena Russell, Barbara Bain. I saw very interesting. I was going to send it to you. Somebody put, I think it was Peter Graves. Yeah, it was Peter Graves, and he goes, listen, I have a new undercover mission for you. And then there's a picture of Barbara Bain and Martin Landau from Mission Impossible. Yeah. And he goes, you both are going undercover on Moonbase Alpha. Which I thought was pretty funny. I saw it today. Yeah. But the that's why I love the idea of what you're doing, that your documentaries, and that's why I called it one of the great fan documentaries, because as a fan of Space 1999, yes, and as a fan of the Eagle Transporter, but I love the track that you're taking. Mm-hmm. And this idea that I believe in you, in the sense that I believe, as you do, that when we were growing up, I mean, up until the time I was 5 years old, like I knew the names of all the astronauts when I was 5.
Me too.
And I was watching Saturn, like it never, look, I'll watch a SpaceX launch. I love watching SpaceX launches, and I can't get enough of them. And watching those boosters land, on a barge at sea or even on dry land, blows me. Every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my God. And when they hoisted up Starship, I mean, that thing is so big that I can't, despite what now Elon Musk is like in free fall in the perception of the public and the world, but he's still got SpaceX cooking, and SpaceX is pushing the space program mightily forward. And with the combination of, India landed on the moon for not a whole lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And if they can make this viable, and if they do find water at the bottom of some of these craters on the South Pole, and we don't have to take water to the moon, that's going to be a game changer. Helium-3, whatever's up there. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sort of sad that I don't get to live 200 or 300 or 400 years, because I would love to see where all this is going to take us. And I think I think humanity is going to be profoundly changed in the next, I'm optimistic, in the next 50 years, because it will have to be, because we're sliding into such mediocrity now that it's almost embarrassing. Our political infighting, the Republicans and the Democrats, and the way it's so embarrassing.
I could not agree more.
I always think about The Godfather. It's like, never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking. The way our politicians act, I'm like, I'm not picking one side or the other. I mean, almost all the politicians on whatever side.
Oh no. I'm very much. I hate the term middle, because I actually don't think there is a middle. But I'm not. I don't buy into the binary. I think I think it's all. It's kind of a sham in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I just want, as Bill and Ted would say, let's be excellent. Right. Or is that not Bill and Ted? Is that Wayne's World? No, that's Bill and Ted. But I mean, it's just I don't understand like why we aren't aspire. That's why modern Star Trek is so depressing to me.
We need JFKs. We're missing that. We need there's a type of leader that isn't happening these days. It hasn't happened for a while. I was kind of hoping that the Obama thing might have gone that way, but it didn't pan out that way. But we haven't we need a different type of leader. I think in a way, some visionaries to point. There's some opportunities, and I agree with you there that we could turn it around, but we're going to have to have a different type of perspective and leadership, and we have to get away from this me. The entire world revolves around me thing, and I don't know, with social media, I think it makes it hard.
I think that we're going to evolve out of that because right now everyone's all looking for personal validation, and people are going to realize that it's not coming. Mm-hmm. Everyone right now is wanting whatever it is that they want validated about themselves, whether it's their identity, whether it's their job, whether it's their affiliations. They're looking for social media or whatever to give them validation. It doesn't work. But what I'm going to say is, I think that part of that stems from we don't have any greater mission anymore. Right, exactly.
Right. And I think that emptiness of not having that greater mission is part of what's causing us to live in these silos in a way. And also, like you said, constantly looking for validation and trying to feel like we matter and trying to feel like there's some purpose to all this. And I feel like that's what we need as a species, is something greater, that like we're all working towards something, and there's a goal, and that's I think that would change things.
100%. And I think part of that does come with education, in the sense that when I was growing up, where I grew up, the idea was, I always thought that, hey, let's go do that thing. Do you want to go do that? Let's go make that. Let's do this thing, and everybody I knew would be like, yeah, let's go. Like there was, and it didn't matter what it was. Do you want to start a business? Yes.
That's who I am. That's how I live my life, right?
Yeah, of course. And it was always that way, and it was never. And now we have the tools. The technology exists. I wish that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wish I was 5 years old right now, and wanted to make movies, because we had an 8mm camera that you would shoot 3.5 minutes, and you'd have to wait a week to get it back to see what you'd shot, and it was painful to wait. You go to Photomat and drop off your film and get it back in a week. But now with the technology, you're shooting something on your 4K iPhone. You can bring it back and add X-wing fighters to the footage you just shot. And yet, where is all of our new great emerging independent filmmakers? You hear about the kids who made Talk to Me, the Australian brothers. They were cutting their teeth making movies on TikTok and stuff, and they've broken through, and they made a horror film that made a lot of money. Well, why isn't there kids like that every day?
Right.
Why isn't there movies like Talk to Me coming out every week? There's amazing stuff happening on TikTok and social media, because it's hard. Making a movie is effing hard.
It's really hard.
Where's all the new rock bands? Where are they? And now it's possible to and I know that there's a lot of people playing rock and everything, but we're still seeing who is controlling the future.
Yeah, see, the problem for me is, I feel like some of this has to do with the system of gatekeepers that we've got with everything at this point, right? It's like there's and I don't want to give them too much power, because I agree with you that initiative is everything, right? It's having the initiative to do it, because at the end of the day, you still have to step up and figure it out and do it, no matter what. That's part of why, literally, you showed that video of mine earlier. I've been working to try to tell these great stories for years and years and years, and I cannot get Hollywood studios to listen to me. I don't know. And at first, it was like, was it personal? Is it something? It's like, well, no. I mean, the content's there. I had plenty of people validate the content, right? It's the system. The system is, people are like, well, I don't know what Oceanus is, and it's like, I've never. I don't know what this is. I don't want to take a risk on this. Now, if I had rebooted Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, I might have had more of a shot. You know what I mean? Or Man from Atlantis, or something like that.
I mean, Oceanus is really impressive. I would have thought someone would have just come along, like you shot so Oceanus is a feature film that you shot basically the first third of. Right. So for what you did, incredibly impressive. You have decent actors. That, and I thought you really pulled it off. It's really intriguing. Whenever I've watched it, and I've watched it more often than I'd care to probably admit, just because I was there. It still amazes me that you were able to do that, and that thing was never sat. The subset that you built, which was an awesome. I mean, it was as great as any set I mean, that submarine that you had, it's the full. I mean, it's a mini sub, but it's as good as anything I've ever seen built for any movie ever. It was so cool, and the fact that you were able to shoot it and it never was put in the water is amazing. It's so cool.
The most water we ever had around there was 1 cup of water that a stagehand poured when we opened the hatch. That was right. The most water we had in an entire
That's
film.
right. I mean, but the fact that somebody with all the garbage that's actually aired, you had already made a third of this movie for not a whole lot of money, and be like, okay, kid, here's $5 million, go finish it. Make it for streaming.
I had dozens of meetings about this, right? And it's like, and a lot of times I was in, I'm over at Netflix and I show it over there. I'm showing, and then the guys were so sort of bleary-eyed and tired, and it was sort of like I'm meeting with these guys and just like, yeah, okay, what's this? that was the meeting I had at Netflix. It was literally like, oh, okay, what do you got?
Right. You know what I mean? Well, and the thing is, that's the real problem is the people that are. Like you say, the gatekeepers. There's so many different. You have like the they call it now the deep state of the managers and the agents, the big agents that run all the deal making and all the big names, and then you've got this mid level of all these people the people that you and I have to meet with, that are not interested. They're bored.
They're bored.
They can't really greenlight anything because
their jobs in a way.
They have no power.
At the top and they aren't at the bottom, so they're stuck, right? And they're like, "Well, I don't really want to. If I put this forward and it doesn't work, what happens to me?"
They're all so they'd rather, and they've got their cushy jobs. They get their paychecks, and they've never actually made anything.
They've never made anything.
So when you go in, and
people judging my work in Hollywood. And I'm like, okay, like, wait, like, what have you done? Right? They're literally like, we haven't heard of you before. Well, I'm like, dude, I've never heard of you.
Right. Well, that's and the people they've heard of is a very limited, because they're only looking at people that they've heard of that have already got. So they have no nothing.
Well, think of someone like yourself who has so much depth of knowledge of the history of cinema. Right, you know so much about this, you really do, right? And can you imagine? Well, you've been there. You're pitching something to someone who their knowledge of cinema began in the 1990s, if that, right? Yeah. And then it was really mainstream movies from the night, right? You know what I mean? It's like wow. I mean,
even like it's today, for instance. So this movie Tango Shalom that I edited and produced, I post supervised it. I was the VFX supervisor. Tobias did some shots for us. Yeah. And so it opened. It had its premiere in Germany. Now it's a little tiny movie no one's ever heard of. However, I basically finished that movie. Like I could do anything. Now that movie's never going to set the world on fire. It will return the investors make their money back and then some. Everybody's happy. That's good. That movie has no one will care. Now I know that no one will care, but the fact is I can't walk into a room and have somebody go, because they don't know what it is. They can't look at my value and go, that's really interesting that you produced it, you edited the film, there were reshoots that you wanted done, you got effects people to do effects for your movie. Darren Doctorman did wire removal and stuff. He did a great job. And no one knows. So even though that I have a film that is streaming on Peacock and Amazon that was blessed by the Pope, that played all around the world, none of that matters. I walk into a room and people are like, so I'm not interested. So
well, you love Parallel Man, my project Parallel Man.
I loved it.
Right? Okay. I took that. I'm not going to say where I took it, but because I don't want to,
And by the way, you saw clips. People saw it's the animated sequence. It's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you. And worked really hard, put together my own team that did that of a bunch of student interns who had worked with me. We came together. We did this thing. Put it together for I was able to get John Cho to do the voice of the main character.
And Lance Reddick.
And Lance Reddick, the late Lance Reddick, who was a good friend of mine. It's very sad to lose him recently. But we did this thing, and I went all around different places to pitch this, right? And the response I got was, well, one place I got, could you remake it, but have it be about animals? And I was like, what? Wait, what? They're like, yeah, because see, we don't think this is it's not adult enough for grown-ups. I mean, can you make if you so we want to make it more for children. I was like, so you want to do a story about a parallel, this what I mean, this alternate reality thing, and we were really ahead of the curve on the alternate reality.
Oh yeah,
thing.
you were way ahead.
right? And I'm like, animals, okay. Then I would go other places and they go, well, okay, is this like Archer, or is it like Rick and Morty,
Right.
or is it like? And I'm like, no, it's not like any of those things. It's like itself. It's the closest thing I could say is I was trying to emulate like Star Wars: A New Hope, in that the energy of it. It's got this propulsiveness and cool characters, and it's tried, you know what I mean, right? But I wasn't trying to do this. And everywhere I went, it was like, if you can't put it in one of our existing buckets, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with
and by the way, they don't even know what those buckets are. Like, if you were to say to them, and they don't even know what its lineage is. Like, I go into meetings and I bring up a million different things that have already been made, books that no one knows any of that shit. And it's and then they look at me because, oh, you're just a fan. Like, you don't know what's good or bad, and it's really interesting. It's really frustrating, and but we still do it. I'm not going to stop trying to do it.
I'm not giving up. I mean, there's no reason to. It's like my movie for Stephanie. I have Ming-Na Wen attached, and Isai Morales attached, and Brianna Hildebrandt. They've all stuck it out with me on that.
Well, and by the way, I read the book. You wrote a book with Kevin J. Anderson. You sent me one. Thank you. A hardcover. It's great. Like, I want to see that movie, and obviously you can see clips from it. You've already done the production design. All this work has been. I'm looking at it going, why, with all the movies that get greenlit at streamers, why not just make this?
Well, no, I want to tell you the story. Okay, so I had one of the producers of Lord of the Rings attached to this project. Okay?
Right.
Like producing it with me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Huge producer. Multi-billion-dollar guy, right?
Yeah, I know. I know him because we when he was always around when we were doing the Lord of the Rings special features.
Okay, so you know him. He pitched Persephone, and he would send it over to studios, and what the question would be? Who's in this?
Right.
Okay, and it was like, who's in this? What's the budget? Who's in this? And then he'd go, well, we've got and this is this. We've got all this production design. I'd love to show you. I'd like you to meet the director. And you know what they would respond? They go, yeah, we're going to decline to read that. Because of who was in it,
right? And
saying that these actors, who you and I both know, genre people, would go crazy for these actors.
Yeah, the villain from Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, that guy. He's
exactly. And I'm being told, that this is an issue. We can't. It's always maybe Chris Hemsworth. What about Chris Hemsworth? I always would hear that. Like, maybe we should get Chris Hemsworth. Nothing against Chris Hemsworth. It's just. There's something really weird about having the same actors. And I always think about like the Oscars and those first few rows at the Oscars. It's like, if you don't have one of those people in your movie, you can't make your movie.
Well,
it's.
But you think in our streaming world, like, I just watched a 7-part series called Who is Aaron Carter, kind of a spy thriller kind of a thing. Really good. The first episode was a little slow, but the other 6 episodes, it was great. I didn't know anyone who was in it. I think it was made in Spain, Europe. It didn't matter.
See, that's another thing. Like I was just over in Europe, earlier this year, and I had a much better reception to my work over there. They were, it's possible that I might end up just producing this stuff over there because, the people are like, my gosh, you did all these designs. This is fantastic. You're really planned out. This is wonderful, right?
Well, because they understand you're an artist and you know what you're doing.
They don't even look at it, And I'm not trying to do a woe is me thing. It's
right.
just
No, I know.
astounding. It's astounding. It's like,
the people. I mean, not to bag on everybody in Hollywood, but having worked, I spent after I made Free Enterprise, I called them Evian meetings because people would go, "Would you like Evian?" And you sit down and you talk to people that can't greenlight your project anyway. Yeah. And they just want to hear. They just want to know who you are, so they can say they've met you or whatever and judge you. Well, I've always been somebody, I might have worked in the fringes of the low-budget universe my entire career, but at least I'm making something. Like just last weekend, I was doing, I was body doubling for an actor, and I was getting whipped for our horror movie White Devils. And I had appliances, and I'm out there. I came from makeup effects. I'm getting blood pumped all over me, and there's appliances, and it was a lot of fun. I'm at a Vincent Gostini's effects studio, and he's done all the appliances. They look great. They're fantastic. And we shot all day long with Massimo Zeri, the man who shot Tango Shalom. He shot White Devils, and we're shooting second unit stuff. I'm like, I'm actually making this movie. Right. I'm producing it. Right. I'm out there. Those idiots that I'd have to meet with have never done any of that.
No, no.
And
No,
so
I have a buddy who calls it the free water tour.
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
It's the
you know
free
what I mean?
water.
It's like
That's
you go on
exactly
the
what
free
it is.
water tour, and it's just like, hey, you want water?
I mean, and the
then
funny in
yeah.
our streaming world, dude, if Netflix were to if Netflix were to say like Blumhouse, Blumhouse, Jason Blum, we're going to make $5 million movies, and if one
Yeah.
of them breaks through, we'll use Universal to theatrically release them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why the streamers aren't doing that. Like,
You know
like
what's funny? I kind of envision myself. I want to become like a Blumhouse of hard sci-fi, right?
me
Where
too. I'm right there
right?
with you.
You know what I mean? And I want to do that kind of thing. I don't want to make movies that have budgets higher than 15 to 25. You know, I don't think you
Nope.
need it. I don't need
Nope.
that. I don't need $200 million or $100 million.
Nope.
It's like, you've seen what I can do. It's like, if someone said, here's like 15, $20 million, go do your thing, I'll blow them away.
Yeah,
you know,
I
right?
feel the same way, and there should
You
be a studio that's doing that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was trying with Mike Bodden to do that with the Illinois Film Commission. You know, to put together we have a slate. I've got the scripts to make 5 million or less movies that are hard sci-fi or horror. They delve into horror as well.
Or horror, yeah.
You know, we would make them all, and we could do it. And it's just people look at you because no one in the business now knows how.
Right.
They don't know how.
Right.
And
I
when you're
agree.
talking to people at the studio level, they're looking at you like you're crazy because they've never actually made anything.
Right.
Hey, listen, there's some questions people have fired
Oh
in.
yeah, let's do it. Let's do some.
Well, I got
questions.
some super chats here. First of all, Christian Grajewski, he became a member of the channel and upgraded his membership. Thank you for that. Derek became a member and upgraded it. And Manowar 665, neighbor of the Beast, became a new member. Thank you. An old friend from a different stream. Brian became a member, and hey, it's me in HD became a member, and Bert L became a member. Scott Bartholomew says both seasons of Space 1999 can be streamed for free on the Roku channel. I did not know that. By the way, those Blu-rays are amazing.
Absolutely.
They're amazing.
No, they are great. Yeah.
Tom Jr. Jackson gifted a membership. Thanks, Tom. He's our moderator. And Tom Jr. Jackson says that September 13th is the day that Free Enterprise takes place on. Well, it's one of the days for sure. Darth Plato says, if the show is ever remade, would it be renamed Space 2099, do you think?
So the interesting thing is this. I have actually pitched twice to ITV reboots of Space 1999. And I got very, very close the second time, actually. The issue that they've struggled with is, there was an attempt to make a Space 2099 about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I've got artwork from it.
Yeah, and it did not go over well. The fans really rejected it, and I think there was there were some mistakes made in terms of thumbing their noses at some of the aspects of what the fans loved and everything, right? So one of the things that I did especially the second pass I did on this, I really included some of the top fan influencers in the Space 1999 community and got their opinions as I started crafting this idea. I had put them on NDAs and put this thing together. But one of the things I had a great meeting with ITV, and they actually talked to me about the fact that they have some very specific rules. They don't want to do Space 2099 because that's not the name of the IP, right? I had pitched something that had time travel in it, that there was a reason with that and everything. And I'm not giving up on that idea, by the way. We'll see what happens. But I think there's something that could be happening with the concept of an alternate reality and something there. But they were saying that, one of the things that they've had some big names try to pitch them on reboots.
Yeah.
And the one problem is everybody's so obsessed with how does the moon get blasted out of orbit, as opposed to who are the characters, what's the hook, how do we make this for a new generation of people who have never heard of it, all those sorts of things, right? And so in hearing all this and learning about it, I still think there's a possibility that there's an approach that could be made to bring it back,
Well, again, it's fascinating. Like we did a proposal for UFO.
Yeah.
And our UFO reboot takes place in 2030.
Okay.
And the UFO TV series happened. It occurred, and through machinations and stuff, and it was over, and Shadow shut down for various reasons in 1996, and it's been forgotten. And the only thing that remains of Shadow for various plot machinations is Sid. And no one knows Sid is there. They can't. No one's in contact with it. They don't know. And Sid is the only thing that knows that the aliens are coming back.
Okay.
And so, but the problem that they had is they're like, well, nobody remembers the original show. And I said, but you don't have to remember the original show. We just base the history is there, so people know that it's like what no one cared about the history of Westeros when you're watching Game of Thrones, but you heard all about the history of Westeros, the Mad King. It informed the entire show, and now they've gone back and you're watching House of the Dragon. Right. And it's like I think it's cooler to say that we thought it was cooler to say that UFO occurred. And now because we're already, we're in and the way we've set it up, it's like a totally different show. But if and having a history, because anything that has a history is world built. You've got world building there that's already. That's why I always thought the Menagerie was so brilliant. The way that they repurposed,
absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
and the reason, and everybody from modern Star Trek's like, well, let's go back to the Cage, and I'm like, look, the Cage was rejected and it never aired on television until 1988, and yet all of modern Star Trek, from Star Trek 09 to now, everyone goes back the Cage, the Cage, the Cage.
Yeah.
And it's like, but the Cage itself is not canon.
Right.
Only the Menagerie is canon, and the Cage as it worked, and everyone's like, the whole horrible depiction. And if you watch the new animated short that dropped today, once again they just destroy Spock and make him look like an idiot.
It's terrible.
You just look at it, and I'm like, what is it with the Cage? I mean, why? If I was doing Star Trek, why would you want to base your entire TV show? Wouldn't you want to create new characters?
I don't know. It feels like they're risk adverse. It's this weird thing. Like it's trying to have their cake and eat it too. It's like, well, we're doing something new, but we still want to kind of mine this other thing, but we don't really do it like it originally was. It's very strange. I don't get it. Yeah.
The Last Gunslinger says, greetings from England. For me, the Terminator trumps T2. Slick world building, great effects, trippy 80s synth, that relentless horror vibe, all on a tiny budget of $8 million. I think it was actually less. An original idea fueled by peak genius James Cameron. What are your thoughts on that?
Could not agree more. I feel like T2, while I enjoyed it when I saw it, it felt much more like a product to me, or like let's go make some more money. Whereas the first one was just super creative, super original, completely unexpected. You know what I mean? It's one of those moments where, come on, you were there. It's like it like your jaw dropped. It's like I hadn't seen anything like it. That was so cool. And so I feel like that's part of what you were talking about earlier. We need more of that. We need more of those kinds of original, mind-boggling ideas. And I know they're out there. The problem is, as you're saying, the system is broken in a way that we can't get access to them. They can't get funding at this point. It's really
especially when you already have something. It's like done. Like Oceanus is like
it's even worse.
Done. Let's go make.
One of the hardest jobs I've had has been really maintaining a relationship with my partners and investors to keep things moving, to be able to make this stuff right, and they believe in me. And then to be sort of this disheartening thing of continually butting up against this Hollywood machine and not being able to break through. That's why I've decided to just start going to Kickstarter, because I figure I got to take this to the fans, So I'm.
I haven't said it, but the link to the Kickstarter is in the description of this show. You can see it right down there. You can just click on that link, and you've started out. You have a long way to go, but I think you're crossed 25 grand already first day. You're doing pretty good. I mean, and I like the fact that it's ambitious. It's an ambitious. You're asking for $500,000.
It is. It's a hard one. It's a lot of money. But I'll tell you this: we debated it as a team, and we went back and forth, and we're like, well, look, we want this to be really good, and it's going to look like it costs millions of dollars, right? And it's like, okay, if we're actually going to redo visual effects, we actually want to do a 2-camera motion picture quality shoot that could actually be shown in theaters and all this stuff. Like, why are we? I could go say we need $100,000. It's like, what are we going to, what I mean? It just isn't going to be, it's not going to be what we're trying to do. I mean, it doesn't. So what I'd rather do is work hard at this, get the help of people like yourself, others, to try to spread the word. And, there's a bigger goal here. There's something bigger here. And then, like you said, it's a discussion of bigger ideas, and so I'm hoping that we can catch fire and get some support and really turn this into something much larger.
Well, listen, I'm really excited about this Kickstarter, and I wanted to support you, and we'll check in, and I'll even play your video before my shows to keep promoting it, because I like especially the video about where we're at, about the business and the industry.
Oh, thank you.
And no, I think it's worthwhile, and like I just want to point out, you've already started producing this. You've already done shoots. You've got great people lined up. You're talking to some legends in the business. I mean, Brian Johnson, man.
Yeah, and these guys, they all love what we're doing. They think it's super cool. So, yeah.
Happy Console. Wow. Okay. Happy Console Gamer is a great YouTuber in his own right. He has a lot of fans. He just said, and I didn't know he was a fan of mine, but he's been a supporter of this channel. He says, I just backed the Kickstarter. Good luck, Jeffrey.
Oh, tell him thank you. Yeah, thank you. You can hear me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And Alexander Dukas says 2010 is much better than the groundbreaking 2001. Fight me, bro. The Alexei Leonov slays. Leonov means new lion, new light, the white room, plutonic forms. Okay. First of all, you can't beat Stanley Kubrick. 2010 would not exist without 2001. And I would say this. If somebody said to me right now, Rob, you can have as much money as you want, you can remake any movie you want, I would remake 2010.
And I want to help you.
I would remake.
I'd like to help you.
I would go back to the book. I would remake the book.
The book. But see, there were things in the book that they just could not figure out how to do at the time, right? I mean, the whole Chinese landing and all that sort of stuff. What a great book. But I do want to say, 2010 is a favorite of mine, and you're literally talking to one of the biggest fans of 2010 in the world. I'm not going to say that it's better than 2001, but I would say it's a good film, and I do very much enjoy it.
I do too.
But it's almost like the difference between Star Trek: The Motion Picture and Star Trek II. What I've decided, I've come to terms with it, because I used to say Star Trek: The Motion Picture was the best Star Trek film. What I've realized is it's my favorite.
That's I'm right there with you. It's my favorite, but Star Trek II is the best.
Star Trek II is the best. It took me a while to get there, but that's where it is. So I would say I almost feel the same way with this, that like 2001 is the best, but 2010 is darn good. It's a lot of
fun. I mean, 2010 is a rousing space adventure. I love it. I mean, I saw it. It came out holiday. It was funny because Lynch's Dune in 2010 came out again within a few weeks of each other. And I don't know why, for Warner Brothers 100th anniversary, there's so many, they should have put out someone else is putting out Altered States, but they could have put out movies like Outland in 2010 and in 4K and done special features. They could have got Peter Hyams to do them, and put out Trumbull's Brainstorm in 4K. There's so many things they could have gone in and done. But 2010 still, there's a lot to like in it. And Roy Scheider's great, John Lithgow's great, Bob Balaban's great, Helen Mirren's great. I mean, everybody's great in that movie. It's got a great score. It's got great visual effects. I mean, and it's got great moments. I love 2010.
I do too. I do. Yeah, Lithgow's great in that film.
He's great.
He's really good. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
So, well, listen, Jeffrey, I want to thank you for your time once again. People can go to Kickstarter right now. The link is in the description. You've got 30 days to make $500,000, and we're going to help you every step of the way. People are going to get tired of me talking about this Kickstarter, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I can.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's ambitious, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it work.
And look, if nothing else, I just want to own it. You are going to put it out on physical media, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, okay. Of course. Yeah. No, we're planning to do a 4K and everything of it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. So,
I have people say that the link takes them to the main page of the Kickstarter. Is that true? Let me fix that right now then. While you're here, I will fix that right now.
And I can send you the.
Yeah, that's interesting because I had it. I don't know if something tripped when I hang on.
Something might have. Oh, is there a chat? There is a chat in here. I can give it.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay. 'Cause
And here it is.
here's the
And
actual. There. I put it into our chat here too. That's the.
yeah. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I got it. This is I don't know why this, here, I'm going to go fix it right now. And I'll put it in the live chat, and I'll put it in the description on the show right this moment, so people can, when they go back and rewatch this, they will see the actual thing, because I can edit that way. So, and yeah, I'll also put this in the chat, so there you go. But it's The Eagle Has Landed, so go check that out on Kickstarter. And Sci-Fi, that's weird that it's, because it's the right link.
Did it work now, or is it?
Let's see. I mean, I will. I'm putting it in so the link so you guys have it. But this is the. Yeah. Here's. Oh, you know what? They have a short link. This is even better.
Okay.
I'll put the short link on the live chat. So here we go. And the short link should work because that goes right. It won't be a mistake now. All right, everybody. So in the live chat, there is now a short link that will take you right there. So it's in the chat now. So check it out.
Cool.
And there you go. Well, listen, I will let you go. I will thank you for
very
being
much.
here.
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
This was a lot. What a great conversation, too. Thank you. Come back
Absolutely.
anytime.
No, it's my honor, man. You're the real deal. I always enjoy, where you're coming from and what you're up to. So it means
well,
a lot.
and I you, sir.
All right. Well,
So,
thank you.
all right, everybody. I will let Jeffrey go. Thank you for being here, sir. And
all right.
We'll have you come back soon, and we're going to watch eagerly while this Kickstarter sails across its finish line.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Take care.
All right. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Well, everybody, that was fantastic. I want to thank Jeffrey for coming on. It is a very worthwhile project, so please support it. And on that note, I would like to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for once again being a great moderator. Tom, thanks for saying that about the Kickstarter link. I don't know why it was crazy. Now it should be fine. I was going to do a double header tonight, but I can't because I have to go pick up Elizabeth. But I've moved the show to tomorrow, and I think we'll be doing a fully articulated tomorrow. And I'm going to do it with Anthony, 1/6 Scale Mafia, tomorrow at 11. So we will check that out. And on that note, I would say to all of you, check out the Kickstarter. By the way, it's not just his Kickstarter videos. If you go to that Kickstarter page, it is one of the greatest Kickstarter campaigns I've ever seen. So kudos to you, Jeffrey. It's a great Kickstarter campaign. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to thank my guest, Jeffrey Morris. And as always, have a better day.